Alright, what's up everybody, it's Kami. Welcome to a new series, JoJo Versus, where I take JoJo characters and put them up against other characters, whether they're from an anime or a manga or a video game. You guys get to decide that. So down below in the comments at the end of this video, go ahead and let me know what you want to see for the next video. So for this first one, I thought I would sit down and take two characters that kind of have similar abilities because, you know, when you talk about JoJo characters and stuff like that, right? We talk about all the different stand abilities and how diverse they can be from different powers in different anime and manga. So why not get one that's time related and something else that's also time related and put them together? So for this first one, we're gonna have DIO versus Hit from Dragon Ball Super. So starting off with Hit is the legendary assassin of Universe 6, and he's the strongest character we've seen from Universe 6's roster, with Kaba and Frost being behind him. So already out of his group of characters that are introduced when they're introduced in the Universe 6 tournament arc, when Goku goes and fights him, he's actually the strongest one that he has fought up to that point, and he's pretty much just the strongest person on their team. So already off the bat, he's got this feat of being the strongest person we have seen from his universe. And his main power, which is why I kind of wanted to put him against DIO, is called Time Skip, or Toki Topashi. Now, he's able to skip time for a 1/10 of a second when it's first shown, and when he skips time in this 1/10 of a second, he's able to freely move in that limited time. So if the user has a great speed, then they'll have a great advantage over his or her opponent. So when he uses his time skip, anybody else that's watching, anybody that's spectating, any observers or anybody else that's not within his range, and they see him use this time skip, it looks as if he disappears and reappears somewhere else after the time skip is done. Now, the technique does not stop time everywhere in full effect, so everybody else is still in the normal time zone, but time is frozen for everybody within Hit's range. Now, the Dragon Ball Super manga actually explains that his technique is fully effective on opponents whose power is near to or less than that of the user. Otherwise, his time stop duration decreases the stronger the foe is. And Hit improves his time skip during his battle with Goku, being able to surpass the 1/10 of a second and go up to 1/5 of a second, and then eventually reaching half a second. However, Goku pushes Hit to a new extent after using his Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken ability to become immune to this half-second freeze, allowing Hit to completely freeze someone who was previously moved in his time skip. And also, during Hit and Goku's second fight, Vados explains that Hit can store time he's skipped to create a separate space where he can't be touched. However, Hit uses this ability against Goku, and Goku manages to destroy the space with his Ki and the God Kamehameha. So keep that Ki factor in mind. Ki being the equivalent of, I guess, Hamo and Ripple, since they're both life energy in both of the series. And now moving on to DIO. From part 1, he's a big threat to Jonathan. He's the one that pretty much makes everything in the rest of the series up till part 6 happen, and even events in part 7 are influenced because of DIO, because of Diego being the alternate version of DIO. DIO does a lot of things. Now, we know that DIO has superhuman strength. He can forcibly walk on walls by burying his feet into the wall and just climbing up. We see him do this in the beginning of Phantom Blood. He single-handedly deflected Hierophant Green's Emerald Splash at point-blank range, which is pretty much a barrage of large shotgun-like bullets in the shape of emeralds, and they're flying at him pretty much at the speed of bullets. So imagine that at point-blank range, just getting shot at it with a shotgun at point-blank range, and he's just deflecting it with his fingertips really easily. So he's got really good, you know, reflexes, and that's impressive shit. I mean, y'all deflected Emerald Splash at point-blank range, good for you. And let's not forget that he kind of just, you know, picked up a steamroller like a basketball, you know, kind of palmed it really easily and slammed down the Jotaro. That's pretty damn impressive when it comes to strength. Now, like I mentioned earlier, he also has this super speed and super agility, which kind of ties into his reflexes, but the comparison that we get from Speedwagon, who's the one that describes DIO's speed, is to be said as fast as a cheetah. And going back into his super senses, he was able to hear Jotaro's heartbeat from a few meters away by placing his head on the ground, so DIO's pretty, you know, pretty strong just compared to normal people. And he can regenerate his body faster than fire can consume it, so that's also a plus. And in Phantom Blood, he also survived as just a head and did enough to be able to steal Jonathan's body successfully, so that's also pretty impressive. Also, he can shoot eye beams that are powerful enough to slice through stone, so I guess that's a feat. But Sunlight, or Ripple, aka Life Energy, will completely disintegrate his body, and he'll just be nothing and he'll die. So when I mentioned Ki earlier, that's going to kind of come into play in a little bit, but we're going to talk a little bit more about DIO before we jump into the whole DIO and Hit thing. And the biggest comparison between the two, aside from them both being really strong and really fast, though on completely different planes, DIO can stop time with the Stand the World for a maximum of 9 seconds. So DIO has a time stop for 9 seconds, while Hit has a time freeze essentially for everybody around him, where he's just skipping time so he can do actions and other people can't. And that's for about, what, 15-20 seconds. I probably should have written that down before this, but I kind of forgot to. But anyways, So right off the bat, both of these two characters have a time advantage, or a time stopping advantage, where they can freeze time and they could, you know, do whatever they have to do to dispose of their targets. They're both very strong. They're both very capable of, you know, killing whoever the hell they have to kill. Hit being a legendary assassin and a hitman that always kills his targets without failure. You would think that, you know, if he were to fight Dio, it wouldn't be too much of a problem, or if he were to just fight anybody from the JoJoverse, it would not be too much of a problem. With that being said, Dio's also the same guy that froze time and pretty much just punched a giant hole through Kakyoin's chest, so they're both very destructive. However, when you kind of look at both of their power scaling, it's a really big gap between the two. So in Dragon Ball, we have characters that blow up planets and do a bunch of crazy shit, and they move way faster also, which I'll talk about in a second, but just the power scaling between all of these characters, from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z to JoJo, the characters themselves might be strong. Like, you know, Dio himself is actually really powerful to be able to pick up a steamroller and just, you know, slam that shit on somebody. That's a big deal. Picking up a steamroller is like 22,000, 44,000 pounds of weight. That's at least what I remember seeing the last time I went to look up this topic and talk about it just on Twitter and stuff. And I was, you know, just going over like, wow, this is actually pretty impressive. But, you know, regardless, they're both really strong, but Hit and the Dragon Ball characters just do way more things than these JoJo characters would, and they move incredibly fast. All right, like if you were to take, you know, one of maybe the faster characters, I guess, in JoJo, because Dio's not necessarily slow by any means, but they compare him to moving as fast as a cheetah, while the Dragon Ball characters have instant transmission, where it's an instant transmission and they instantly teleport to people. They have, you know, after image, which is them moving pretty much at like the speed of like sound and stuff. They move at the speed of light, so moving at the speed of light and just moving around that quick is way more of an advantage and way faster than moving as fast as a cheetah. And this kind of also ties into play, this kind of also just ties into Hit and his actual time skip ability. So like I mentioned earlier, in the manga it's explained that Hit's time skip ability has a strength change depending on how strong his opponent is. So of course Dio is very strong in his own universe, in his own right, but Hit is just a much more capable person, and he's used to killing a lot more people. And again, he's an assassin. He's from a different universe, of course, but he's also an alien from space, and he's used to killing people because that's his job. He's a hitman. He just goes in, kills his target, and that's that, and then he gets paid for it. But Hit is way stronger than Dio, and it's not to discredit Dio and to say he's not strong, because he was over here fighting Jotaro, and, you know, he easily rapid kicked him and broke all of his bones and sent him flying through a building. But this is something that Hit would do within his time skip of maybe, like, you know, him skipping 2 seconds, and he would have already demolished them. And going into that, if Dio were to, you know, fight Hit, right, if Hit were to have a hit marker, I guess, on Dio, somebody were to hire him and be like, hey, you have to kill this guy, go do it. All right, Hit is a hitman. He doesn't sit around and waste his time like maybe, let's say, Goku would if Goku were fighting Dio, where he would sit down and be cocky about it and not, you know, care too much about him being a threat, or he would give him like mercy and not kill him all the way or something like that, so he could fight him later on, because that's what Goku does. Hit is a hitman. He's not going to sit there and give Dio any second chances if he's fighting him. And that being said, Dio might not even get a first chance to fight him at all, because there's this big advantage in speed. Hit could easily just, you know, teleport behind Dio, be like, nothing personnel, kid, hit the time freeze. Dio will be like, Nani, and he will absolutely get destroyed. And what do I mean? Okay, so part 3 Dio does still have regeneration, but it's not as good as it was in part 1. Now, part 1 Dio's regeneration kind of just ties into him having his original body and him being just Dio and not having Jonathan's body, is that since he was more used to it and it was his own body, he had more control over it. With that being said, he has a better regeneration capability, and he's able to stop himself from even taking any damage walking through fire. However, in Stardust Crusaders, when we see Jotaro fight Dio in that last fight, when Jotaro punches and beats the shit out of Dio and he crushes his skull and he sends him flying through the tailor's shop, or whatever the shop was, and he sends him flying through the glass window, Dio's leg gets cut off by the glass, and for him to reattach it, he has to crawl up to the office lady or whatever, like the lady that's at the counter, and he's like, hey, can you get my leg for me? So he had to get somebody else to get him his leg, steal her blood, right? Drink her blood, because that's what vampires do. He had to drink her blood, and then he could reattach it back. With that being said, again, since it's not his body, of course, there's this big difference in that. But his regeneration capabilities are definitely not as strong as they were before. While still being very useful, he does require having to drink somebody's blood. And again, we see this happen after when he drinks Joseph's blood. He gets this big power boost. and it does make him a lot stronger. However, he still gets hurt by Jotaro, and when he's getting hurt by Jotaro, it's a very obvious difference in Dio's performance, and he's very obviously getting tired, and he's hurt, and you know, you can just tell the difference. So if Hit were to attack Dio, and he were to just punch the shit out of him a bunch of times, he would probably do what Jotaro did within a way shorter time and break Dio's body into pieces, probably chop his limbs off. And another difference is that Hit can use Ki. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you know, this is kind of just one of those things where it's like, alright, this is a little too convenient, but Ki is life energy, and what can kill vampires? Life energy, or the energy of the sun, aka the ripple. Now, if I were to talk about maybe the Z Fighters fighting against Dio, they all have the solar flare, which is pretty much just using the power of the sun to blind the opponent, and you literally make a giant flare that's pretty much as powerful as the sun. So any of them fighting Dio, if they were to use the solar flare, Dio would instantly die. But that being said, ki-based attacks, so things like the Kamehameha or the Dodonpa and things like that, like a special beam cannon, whatever, Gallic gun, Final Flash, any of these techniques used against Dio would probably just obliterate his body into nothing. We've seen it happen to people like Cell, who could also regenerate, and regenerated from literally just one cell of his being, and he came back with his Sengai boost and whatever and became Super Perfect Cell. We saw him get completely obliterated by Gohan's Kamehameha. So Hit having Ki, given he normally fights up close, he can still use his Ki attacks to completely disintegrate Dio's body. But with that being said, he would be able to injure Dio badly enough to the point where he wouldn't have to disintegrate his body using Ki or anything like that, and he would probably end up killing him, because you still have to get rid of a vampire's brain for him to completely die. And why would I bring this up? Because when Dio's about to kill Jotaro and he picks up the stop sign, Polnareff comes out of nowhere and he literally stabs Dio's the head. He skewers his head with Silver Chariot, and Dio specifically is like, oh shit, that would have killed me if you hit my brain, but you were like a couple inches off. So Hit would just beat the hell out of Dio, obliterate him into a bloody pulp. And again, this comes with him being way faster. Dio has like crazy good reflexes, and he can stop these emerald splashes at point blank range and stuff, and it doesn't phase him. But when it comes to somebody that's moving at probably the speed of light, the speed of sound, however you want to take that, just moving way faster than a cheetah for sure, then he doesn't stand up. He doesn't stand a chance really. He doesn't stand up against Hit, and he just can't do anything to this character. He really can't attack him. I mean, even if he were to try to stop time against Hit would just be moving so much faster at that point already that if Dio were to try and use his stop time within a Hit stop time, he would just evade him and just beat the shit out of him. And of course, Hit can't see stands, but that's another thing. Hit not having to see stands doesn't make a difference, because he's already so much stronger and so much faster than Dio. His time skip is going to last longer against Dio, and he's just going to completely obliterate him. So that's kind of just how things go with that. There's not much else he can really do other than just get bodied in. I'm sorry, I like Dio, but Hit is just way stronger. So anyways, with that being said, this is just the first little thing of JoJo Versus, I guess. If you guys enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like. Let me know who you think would win between Dio and Hit in the comments down below, and tell me why. And for the next video, I guess you guys can go ahead and, I don't know, give me video recommendations for just JoJo Versus. It'll always be one JoJo character against any other character from anything. So, let's say you guys were like, hey, do Speedwagon against, I don't know, Mega Man. Then I would do Speedwagon against Mega Man, and Speedwagon would probably get, blasted by Mega Man, but you guys get the point. So, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like always, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.